Hi everyone, and welcome to Project 8. So I'm in the student view for our class, and for Project 8, we're really going to be setting the stage in Photoshop for more in-depth projects. I just want to get y'all acquainted with some new tools that go beyond our basic understanding of selection tool, shape, text tool, all that stuff. So we're going to be working with some new tools, and that's really going to set us up for future projects in which you're really designing things from scratch. In this project, I'm going to give you the images, and you're going to play around with the tools and sort of make it your own. In addition, you can see that there's a couple parts to the project. There's watching part 2. I really loved y'all's responses from part 1, and I'm looking forward to this extra component that I'm adding this round, which is part 2, finding an advertisement for the corporation that you chose to rebrand in Project 7. So you can go on Google Images search, find a JPEG of an advertisement for them, and post that on the discussion board and sort of analyze that advertisement in relation to what you're thinking about and learning about in this documentary. So you can write a response specifically related to the ad, and then also anything else that stuck out to you. It's really interesting what sticks out to different people, and yeah, I love that. So, okay, then part 3, you're gonna download these 2 images, 1 and 2, and then you're gonna watch this video, which we're making right now. So I've got my Photoshop open, and I'm gonna go to my downloads. Where are you? Downloads. And so I've got 1, and I'm just gonna, there's a couple ways to do it, but I'm just gonna drag it onto my, it says PS at the bottom, that little shape PS, and it just opens it inside of it. You can also go to File, Open at the top, and open the image that way. And so we've got this image here, and I'll move this aside so you can see, I'll close this out, so you can see that over here is my layers panel. And so always remember that if your setup doesn't look like mine, you can always go to the very, very top. You've got Photoshop activated, you click on Photoshop and go to the very top for Window, and then go to Workspace, Reset Essentials, and it'll reset everything for you. Okay. So layers is important, our layers panel down here, and we'll come back to that in a second. But you want the clouds to be your background layer, your background image. And then from there, I'm just going to open my Finder window again and go to my downloads. And I'm just going to drag my other one right on top of it. So again, there's multiple ways to do this. You could go up at the top and do File, Place. Where are you at? Where are you at, File, Place? There's File, Open. There's File, Import. You could do that too. So there's multiple ways to get it in. I just like dragging and dropping because it's so much easier. Okay, once it's in, you'll notice that up here I need to click the check mark to actually make it inside. And because my face is on top of the layers panel, I'm just going to take the layers panel off and drag it over here just for the purposes of this demo so y'all can really see what's happening there. Okay, so a couple things I want to tell y'all is that right here you could see on the image that it's got this little complicated symbol on the bottom right corner of it, and that's what's called a smart object. So whenever you drag stuff in, Photoshop does this invisible barrier around it that doesn't allow you to edit things in all of its capacity for editing it. So in order to really edit things, you have to right click on it, or I'm sorry, double. Ooh, what happened? Hold on, let me pause this. Sorry about that. So you right click on it, not the thumbnail, but the layer itself. And then you go to rasterize layer. And that's going to make it into a non-smart object. Okay. So things that we're used to, but maybe we forgot already, which is okay, is the selection tool, which is up here, the top left. So the selection tool, you need to click on it and you click on what you want to select and move around. You can do that. In order to make things bigger, smaller, and rotate them, you would go to the transform controls, which is up here. And I would hold down Shift. Oh, so interesting. In the new Photoshop, when you hold down Shift, it actually works the opposite as in 2019. It's very interesting. Okay, so don't hold down Shift, and it'll do it for you. And then once I'm good with that, I've got to hit this check mark at the top right. Okay, I'm gonna get out of Show Transform Controls. So what we're going to do today is we're going to use the Magic Wand tool, and we're going to use blending modes and opacity. And the Magic Wand tool is going to get rid of any solid colored background. That's what it does. And it's right here. And it works in what's called tolerance. So tolerance is always going to be found up here. And you can see right now it's at 32. But I'm just going to try, because it's basically saying if I make a click, how tolerant do I want to be about the surrounding pixels and their likeness to that initial click? It's all white here, like all the same color, so it shouldn't be too high of a tolerance because we don't want it to start grabbing the white of the shirt. You can see how those whites are slightly different. So let's just see what happens. I'm going to do 32. And you can see that tolerance is too high. So I'm going to do Command D, which is deselect, and I'm going to go ahead and lower that tolerance to 10. And I'm going to click, and that looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. So with that selected, I can now hit delete, right? And I can go into my other little crevices and hit delete as well. And Command D is such a good shortcut because it deselects things. It deselects this marching ant effect. So I can go on to other modes of editing this thing. So I'm going to do Command D, and I'm going to go to my selection tool. I'm able to move them around. You can also come in here with a eraser and clean things up if you'd like. I'm realizing that the pad she's sitting on would take a little bit of cleaning up as well. But I want to talk next about layer opacity and layer blending modes. And all of that's going to happen in the layers panel, which is right here because I moved it up from here because my face was blocking it. And you can see in the layers panel, it's, you know, this one's at the very top of the list, which means it's on top of everything else. And if I go up here to where it says opacity, whatever layer I have selected, I can start to change that opacity. And you can see her fading in and out of the clouds. I could do the same for the bottom layer as well, but I don't want to. And so for this top layer, opacity was doing some pretty interesting things. You can see the clouds starting to shine through. But it can get even more interesting and more varied in your results when you start to use something called blending modes. And blending modes are all found right here, right next to opacity, and sort of work in conjunction with opacity. And the way blending modes works is it sort of does the math for your layer. Like it does math between pixels based on color, based on brightness, based on saturation, a lot of different factors. And you'll see in a moment what exactly I'm talking about. But with the layers selected, I can go into my blending modes and I can get a preview of them by just hovering and not clicking. And so maybe I'll stop on lighter color. I'll want to experiment with all of them. I want y'all to experiment with all of them. But I also want y'all to see that in addition to having a blending mode, you can change opacity, which bears some effect on the visual impact of it all. So I want y'all to play around with that, find something good with that, and then use your text tool, right? So text tool over here and all of the stuff up here to just have some sort of a phrase. It can be a word, it can be a phrase. I just want y'all to get used to editing text, moving it to where you'd like, and sort of like designing it in that way. So play with that and realize that text is a layer too. So I can change the opacity of that text. I can change the blending mode of that text. I just really want y'all to have fun with this. And I can change the layer order, right? Have one on top of the other. See that happening? So play around with that and play around with the design of all this could be. Another thing that you can play with if you want, and it's not required, is something called, let me see if I can get it, hold on, is something called adjustments. And we'll play around with that for future projects as well, but if you just want to get kind of acquainted with it, you can see up here, there's all these tabs and one of them says adjustments. And there's all these different options for editing photos and editing pictures. So if I go to hue and saturation, for example, I can start to change like the hue of the scene, give it more purple, make it more saturated. There's so much to play with all of that. I can affect brightness, I can affect all sorts of things. And if you hit this little button right here on it all, you can snap it so it's only affecting the layer like right below it. You can see how that changes a little bit. So play around with that if you'd like. Once you're done, you're gonna go to File, Save As. I like to save mine on my computer, just because this cloud thing is so temporary. Save it to my desktop because I'm that kind of a gal. And you want to change the format to JPEG. Simo, save. Remember here you want your quality to always be maximum, always, always. Click OK. And then we'll go back here and submit assignment. And you'll submit it that way. Okay? So you've got your video, your response, following along with the demo, and then submitting that. And that's going to be where we're at for Project 8 and set us up for moving forward. So let me know if you have any questions. It's due April 8th by 1 p.m. And yeah, I'm here. Have a good night. Bye.